Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I'm going to be your host, The Irrelevant Nerd, and today we're going to rank the top 10 most underrated comic book movies of all time, at least the live-action ones anyways. If I included the animated ones, it'd really just be a list of a lot of the DC animated movies, so we'll keep it to live action. And really, most of the time when it comes to comic book movies, the ones that seem to get discussed the most are, the consensus best of all time types, like The Dark Knight and Infinity War and Endgame, Logan, Spider-Man 2, so on and so forth, which I obviously love those movies. But with this list, I wanted to give some love to some other truly great comic book movies that don't get talked about nearly enough, and just kind of let them have a moment to shine. So before we get started, I do have a few honorable mentions before we get to the list. First honorable mention is The Losers, a very fun ensemble action comedy movie starring Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Chris Evans, Zoe Saldana, and Idris Elba, and came out, I believe, in 2010, 2009. But it's a lot of fun. It's not one of the best you'll ever see, but it's a good time, and it is worth watching if you haven't seen it. Next honorable mention is Superman Returns, a spiritual successor to the Richard Donner Superman films, starring Brandon Roth, who is a truly great Superman, like one of the best, and it's a real shame that we did not get more movies with him being Superman. And the last honorable mention is going to be the Thunderbolts, the latest ensemble MCU movie. It's kind of directly about mental health, and this one would probably be number 1 or 2 on this list, as I do genuinely love this movie. I think it's fantastic, but it has only been out for about 6 months, so it could still find its audience. So that's why I'm going to leave it in the honorable mentions for now. But if I remake this list in like 3 years and it hasn't gained popularity, it's definitely going to the top of the list. Okay, with the honorable mentions out of the way, let's just go ahead, jump right into it, starting with number 10, V for Vendetta. Released in 2006, starring Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving, and it made about $135 million at the box office against a $52-ish million budget. So it was a moderate success, but it didn't kill it by any means. And even though this movie is 20 years old, it feels more relevant than ever, with just a very politically charged story that is not afraid to go dark and heavily lean into symbolism. The action is a lot of fun and stylish with its own sort of unique flair, and Hugo Weaving just absolutely nails it as V. This is definitely one of, if not his best role. Number 9, Kingsman: The Secret Service, released in 2015, starring Taron Egerton, Colin Firth, Mark Strong, Michael Caine, Samuel L. Jackson, and it did make a decent amount of money. It made $414 million at the box office against a $90-ish million budget, so it was successful, and it is actually the highest grossing movie on this list. But I don't think this movie is talked about nearly enough. It is so quickly paced and a perfect blend of the spy genre with comic book energy. It's funny, it's full of stylized, over-the-top action, and really just plain fun. And the church scene in this movie is a top-tier comic book movie scene, and it's worth it to watch the movie for that scene alone. It is truly fantastic. All right, number 8 and I do have a little bit of a cheat here because I'm going to go with Hellboy and Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, tied for number 8. Released in 2004 and 2008, respectively, and starring Ron Perlman as Hellboy, and both written and directed by Guillermo del Toro. The first one cost about $63 million to make and made about $99 million at the box office, so really barely profitable. The second one cost about $83 million to make and made $168 million, so significantly better, but again, neither of them really killing it. But the movies are both so good. The creature designs, the set designs, the practical effects, the atmosphere and tone, the characters are all just top notch. It just works so well together, and the movies have aged surprisingly well for the most part, even though they're both, over 20 or about 20 years old at this point. They both just look fantastic, and Guillermo del Toro just has such a unique flair that it's fun to go back and watch these movies from time to time. So really, really fantastic movies. Number 7, another cheat, Blade and Blade 2, released in 1998 and 2002, respectively. Second one was also directed by Guillermo del Toro, starring the one and only Wesley Snipes, and one of the best comic book casting of all time. The first one cost about $45 million to make, made $132 million at the box office. Second one cost $54 million, made $155 million at the box office. So both fairly successful for the time, but obviously not these billion-dollar box offices that these comic book movies kind of got used to in the later 2010s. And the movies have definitely fallen into the background as the comic book movie genre has become more saturated, and it's a real shame because they are fantastic films. The action is fun and intense, and they have a dark tone, and Wesley Snipes is just effortlessly cool, and they really did help pave the way for modern comic book movies. Number 6, Dredd, released in 2012, starring Carl Urban as Judge Dredd. The movie cost approximately 40-ish to $45-ish million to make, depending on which reports you trust. It only made $41.5 million at the box office, so unfortunately considered a flop, and I don't understand how this movie didn't do better and how it isn't more popular even at this point. Like, it's great. The movie has a non-stop pace. There is not a single second of this movie that is boring in any way, shape, or form. The action is brutal and fun, and the movie just has like a gritty texture and like feel to the whole thing that I love, and just its own vibe. And I'm so bummed that we'll never end up getting a true sequel to this movie. I know that they announced that they were going to be rebooting the franchise with, I believe, Taika Waititi is coming in to write and direct, I'm pretty sure, and I don't know how I feel about that. I think he has some talent, but I also think that, I don't know, he's a tendency to go overboard sometimes. So I am looking forward to it just because I love the character, but Dredd, truly fantastic movie. Number 5, Kick-Ass, released in 2010, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson, Chloe Grace Moretz, Nicolas Cage, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, and cost about $30 million to make and made $96 million. So very profitable, but not much of an impact, being an under $100 million box office. And this one was also directed by Matthew Vaughn, who had directed Kingsman, that I had mentioned earlier on this list. But this movie is violent, bloody, over the top, hilarious. The character of Big Daddy is just fantastic, and Hit Girl is such a badass. Like, she is such an amazingly fun character, and I do wish more people were talking about this movie because it has a very unique vibe for a comic book movie, and I think it just deserves to be talked about more. Number 4, Constantine, released in 2005 and starring the wonderful Keanu Reeves. Cost about $90 million to make, made $230 million in the box office, so a moderate success, and I have such nostalgic love for this movie. Keanu is admittedly odd casting, but for some reason it just works. I don't know why, it just does, but the world building of the movie is incredible, and the movie has a very unique style and vibe with the supernatural element that you don't really see a lot in comic book movies, and it is what makes the John Constantine character so great, and I think the movie kind of really nailed that aspect of it. And I know a sequel is in the early stages of development, and I am desperately hoping that it will be made with the original director, Keanu, coming back. He's talked about it, and I desperately want it to be good because I think a sequel could just be so much fun, especially with the advancement of technology and the sophistication of comic book movies over time. Like, I would just really be interested in seeing what that looked like. So fingers crossed that it actually happens. Number 3, The Punisher, released in 2004, starring Thomas Jane and John Travolta. Cost about $30 million to make and made $55 million in theaters, so really, again, not much of an impact at all, like a lot of the movies on this list. And this movie, it might be a little high on this list, like, I know that. I have such a strong bias towards it because I have always loved it. Since the first time I saw it, there was just something about it that always just stuck with me, and hence the title of the list. I think it's massively underrated. It's brutal in a fun comic booky way. I think it really nails the No Mercy vibe of Frank Castle from the comics, and I would have loved a sequel. I know that Punisher Warzone is technically a sequel to this movie, and I actually do have fun with that movie in its own way, and I think Ray Stevenson does fine, but I would have loved to have seen more Thomas Jane as the character, and, you know, maybe we'll get a cameo of him in the next 2 Avengers movies. Nothing too crazy, but I really wouldn't mind seeing it because I think this movie is massively underrated, as I said, because it is just so good. All right. Number 2, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, released in 2010, starring like Michael Cera, Chris Evans, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Anna Kendrick, Kieran Culkin, Brandon Roth, Aubrey Plaza, Brie Larson, and so on and so forth. Like, this cast is stacked. Like, especially for the time, like, a lot of these actors were either very prominent at that time or very much like on the rise of their career, and the fact that they're all here is really crazy. And Edgar Wright really managed to craft something beautiful with this cast. They all just fit perfectly. It cost about $80 million to make, and unfortunately only made $52 million, so it is a box office bomb. I remember at the midnight premiere, my friend that I went with and we were the only ones there, and I remember just thinking about how much everybody else missed out because this movie's so good. Like, I don't know, it's so unique, and unlike a lot of the movies on this list that skew towards like the dark and edgy in tone, this movie is bright, it's colorful, vibrant, and is endlessly creative with the comedic gags. The action is fun and visually beautiful and compelling, and you care about these characters from the onset. It's a truly fantastic movie that's probably right inside the top 15 comic book movies of all time. Like, it is really that good, and it deserves so much more love than it has gotten. And I know that it does for sure have a cult following, but the amount of people I've run into who haven't even heard of this movie is just mind-blowing to me. All right, coming in at number 1, a movie I've actually talked about before, Watchmen. Released in 2009, starring a massive ensemble cast of very talented actors, but the real star is the director, Zack Snyder. That's just how a lot of his movies go. It costs $145 million to make, made $187 million, and it is considered a financial failure once you add in all the marketing budget and whatnot, which is crazy because this film is brilliant. I don't think it is a perfect adaptation, but I do think that Zack Snyder managed to capture the tone, the visuals, and really the moral complexity of the graphic novel very, very well. It's dark, it's violent, and it is extremely compelling as you're learning more about the world and these characters, but the way that the story and the mystery behind it all plays out as it just keeps your attention from the very opening scene. And I don't know if it flopped because it came out at the wrong time or the marketing just wasn't very strong. I don't really know, but it is truly great and one of the best comic book movies of all time. I believe it was in my honorable mentions of the top 10 greatest comic book movies of all time. So literally right outside the top 10. And so cannot recommend this movie enough. I think it is truly, truly fantastic and one of the best of all time. And so there you have it. That is my list for the top 10 most underrated comic book movies of all time. I'll do a quick recap. Number 10, I have V for Vendetta. Number 9, Kingsman. Number 8, Hellboy and Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. Number 7, Blade 1 and 2. Number 6, Dread. Number 5, Kick-Ass. Number 4, Constantine. Number 3, The Punisher. Number 2, Scott Pilgrim. And coming in at number 1 is Watchmen. I kept these all spoiler-free because I do know a lot of people haven't seen them, and I strongly recommend them all. They, at worst, are all like a 8.5 out of 10, probably actually a little bit better than that, but I'd have to go back and think about it. And they all bring something unique to the comic book movie genre that you're not going to get in a lot of these other movies that we have gotten over the past decade or so. But let me know what you think down below. If you're wondering, why certain movies, like why isn't The Crow on here? Like, put that down below. Like, that's why I started the channel. I want the discussion. So let me know anything like that. And of course, let me know your top 10 or your top 5, top 2, top 1, whatever you want to put down. I would love to see it. I'll be making some more videos very soon, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next one.